And let's take you live now to an ActionSA briefing that's currently underway. Let's take you there live.
And so we received, as you know, through the People's Dialogue, I think we've communicated this quite extensively, about 2.4 million South Africans who responded through that process, and as a result gave Mr. Mashaba and the team at the time the mandate to form a new political party, which we now know as ActionSA. And so there have been many examples where we've demonstrated our commitment to having South Africans walk with us in this journey. The first one being, you remember that when we were trying to register as a new political party, we had the objection from the IEC letting us know that there's another political party that is disputing our logo. And so as opposed to us as the proverbial behind closed doors sentiment of having to decide on our own, we took it to the public as to whether we should change our logo or whether we should fight on. And South Africans came back to us in their numbers saying that we should just change the logo. And in fact, they did us a massive favor, because those of you who know graphic design, how difficult it is to use multiple numbers in different ways. And so I think that all of us here and South Africans in general are very pleased about the current logo that we have, and that we don't have to run around with all the different colors of the flag. So we're very pleased about that. You can see our colleague there in the black shirt. The design of it becomes very, very pleasing and not confusing. So we're happy about that. The second one, which was a groundbreaking primaries process. I think you all remember that before we had ward councillor candidate elects as well as mayoral candidates, we went back to South Africans and communities across the municipalities and metros in which we finally contested for South Africans to elect their own ward councillor candidates. And that was groundbreaking, never been done in South Africa before. But we also, as ActionSA, demonstrated to South Africa that actually having a primaries process in the country, as well as having online type of election processing going, is actually possible. And we did that. It was quite a successful process. And so we were happy about that. It was not without glitches. However, on the whole, I think over 90% of what we did was fantastic. And so South Africans were very pleased about that. And then finally, where we are here, is that as the coalition's buzz talking was happening last week, as political parties were all waiting with bated breath to see who was going to govern the different metros across the country, we then on Thursday had a press conference to announce that we would not go again behind closed doors and decide as ActionSA on our own as to how it is we're going to undertake these coalition discussions. And so Mr. Mashaba announced at that press conference that we would launch a public participation platform, which we did through our website, where we took South Africans along to say, please give us a sense as to how it is you would advise us to undertake these coalition discussions. And South Africans have come back. It was quite astonishing to have, I think it was even more than 5,000 respondents by Friday, I think by the second day. And that was quite groundbreaking. But we realized again that there are shortcomings with leaving everything to technology, because there are communities that do not have access or adequate access to Wi-Fi and smartphones. And so we undertook in the weekend to have our ground forces go again back to communities to assist with that process, so that our people who are volunteers on the ground were able to assist those who do not have access to Wi-Fi and adequate smartphone technology to be able to participate. And so, it was not a perfect process. It was in a short space of time, but I think we got a good response from good demographic sample of South Africans who responded to the public participation platform, which I believe is now closed. So we want to thank South Africans for that. And so with that said, colleagues, what you're going to hear following my talk now is the fact that I think all South Africans, including our members and our organization, are very pleased by the fact that we are sitting at 2.6% of the vote across the country. We are the 6th largest party now in South Africa, having been born only a year and a bit ago. And we are the 3rd largest party in the city of Johannesburg. What we understand and appreciate is that 2.6% is not our own, it belongs to South Africans. And so we are here to give you feedback on the public participation process that we undertook last week, as well as to tell you where we are sitting with the discussions and coalition conversations that are currently undergoing. I just want to introduce my colleagues who are at the table, and I will go from left to right without any order of importance. On my far right is our colleague who's the mayor or candidate for ActionSA for the city of Tshwane, Mr. Abel Tau. Mr. Abel Tau also is part of the ActionSA coalition's negotiating team. Everybody who you see here is part of that team, barring the ones I will mention. Next to Abel Tau, we've got the ActionSA Gauteng Provincial Chairperson, Mr. John Moody, who is also part of the negotiating team. Next to John, you've got Ms. Feki Mentor, who is no stranger to all of South Africans. She's also part of the negotiating team. She's also the ActionSA Western Cape Provincial Chairperson. Next to Ms. Mentor, we have Mr. Michael Beaumont, who's also no stranger to you all. He is our national chairperson. Next to him, we have Dr. Makhosi Khoza, who is the provincial chairperson for KwaZulu-Natal. She was also the mayoral candidate for eThekwini municipality. She's also part of the negotiating team. And then to my immediate right is our president, Mr. Herman Mashaba, who is also the mayoral candidate for the city of Johannesburg. He is not part of the negotiating team. Neither is Michael Beaumont. I want to make those 2 points very clear. The order of proceedings is as follows, so we can move on swiftly. First, we will have Michael Beaumont, who will give you all the feedback of the results that happened, that came through the public participation platform. Following Michael Beaumont will be Mr. John Moody, who will give us an update on coalition discussions underway at the moment. And then straight after John Moody, we will have Mr. Mashaba give us closing remarks. Is it Michael? No. Oh, okay, don't worry. Yeah, I'll handle that one. And then lastly, Mr. Mashaba will give us closing remarks. And then we will have a moment to have a question and answer process. So do prepare your questions so that they are succinct and they are not essays of questions, and then we can answer them quite swiftly. With that said, thank you so very much. I give over to our national chairperson, Mr. Michael Beaumont.
All right, good morning everyone, to members of the media, my colleagues, and to South Africans who are following these proceedings. It's obviously a great pleasure to be here, and as Lorato has indicated, a process has been followed that we are very proud to present as a first in South African political history. I think I do want to say, particularly on Lorato's introduction, I think the most amazing part about this election result, where ActionSA has emerged as the 6th biggest political party with 2.6%, took place in an environment where we contested 6 municipalities out of 278. And a huge number of people are coming forward to ActionSA to see what kind of result could be produced when we're contesting 9 provinces and the full suite of municipalities. I think straight off the cuff, in terms of our public engagement process, let's dive straight into it. If the technology will work with me, there we go. So the process involved the online survey. It was launched on Friday the 4th and ran Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and the period of yesterday was used to collate all that information. I think what was remarkable is in a very short space of time, 17,500 people were involved in participating in that process. And I think you will appreciate that when you look at the polling and modelling and all sorts of things conducted during elections, a sample of 17,500 is more than adequate to provide a very accurate assessment of how South Africans feel about these things. I think one of the most important things to point out at this point in time is that in this process we did not limit this exercise to ActionSA members or supporters. This process was open to all South Africans. They had to go online and they had to verify their information, because we do want to make sure that people who are registering these opinions are registered voters from municipalities who are real people and not just kind of people who are trolling these processes. And what we found was a remarkable level of engagement. People really did participate in this process with a great deal of enthusiasm. As Lerato has indicated, a lot of people in South Africa have limited access to technology, and particularly with the prohibitively high cost of data in South Africa. It was very important for us to hit the streets over the course of the weekend and ensure that we were taking this opportunity to people on the ground and ensuring their voices were heard in this process across our municipalities in which we contested. By way of the breakdown of respondents, you will see it there, the vast majority from the city of Johannesburg, but very large samples from Tshwane, Ekurhuleni and eThekwini respectively. Obviously smaller samples from KwaDukuza and Newcastle, but I think you will appreciate that 2 and 1% of a 17,000 person survey is very adequate for very small municipalities like Newcastle and KwaDukuza. I think most importantly, and if there's perhaps one thing we take above all else from the public engagement process that emerged, is 91% of respondents have said we need to try and make sure that ActionSA is part of government. In other words, these are individuals who clearly have received ActionSA's message that we are not an opposition party, we're a party of government, and they have responded by saying whatever you do, you need to make sure that you are part of government. And I think that mandate is exceedingly clear. In asking them what are the most important negotiating principles, what should be at the heart of our negotiating process and the agreements that we come up with, it was very interesting to see that by far the vast majority believe that service delivery needs to be at the heart of our process. I think importantly, it says that it needs to be with parties who share our values, which is an important point, and we need to work to keep the ANC out of government. Now, I think the point is when you read these three things together, it is an overwhelming mandate to say we need to ensure that whatever we do, we keep the ANC out, we deliver services, and we join only with political parties with whom we have a connection in terms of our values. And then finally, and very importantly, is the discussion around political parties that people felt we should or shouldn't work with. And you will see on the slide behind me the results that emerge from that process. Now, while many of you would be inclined to look at this information to suggest that we should now rank this in order of who people would like us to work most closely with, I would like to suggest to you that the most important part of the information in the slide is that while South Africans would like us to unseat the ANC and deliver services, they do not hold very strong views about political parties we should work with. Because rather than trying to understand that one party may have 29% support and another 16% support in terms of their joining with us, the actual truth is the vast majority of respondents do not like the political parties that are on offer to ActionSA. They are heavily divided about that, and it would be more important to read that between 71 and 94% of respondents do not support the political parties on display. And that is a very important factor that ActionSA is going to need to bear in mind throughout this process. And then finally, I think by way of the key outcomes in terms of what needs to be taken from this engagement process, the first thing is that South Africans have responded favorably to being asked to participate in a process of this nature. I think we need to be clear, not only has this never been done before, we are the only political party doing it now. And I have seen much engagement in the digital world where people from other political parties feel quite hard done by, that in order to have their voice in a coalition discussion, they need to participate in the discussions of a political party they didn't even vote for, which I think is a remarkable fact. I think the next point is that the vast majority of respondents want ActionSA to remove failing governments and remove the ANC, and there's a real sense amongst people that the ANC's demise in this election is something that we need to consolidate ahead of 2024. Beyond that, South Africans want service delivery from political parties with shared values. And I think if you dig deep down into that, there's a conversation about stability that is very important, that I know that our president will be referring to shortly. And that there is an overwhelming distrust of political parties that are available for these coalition discussions. And that means that ActionSA needs to ensure that its process concluding a negotiation has to produce an agreement that mitigates the distrust and concern that clearly people have with these political parties. So I think from my side, we will obviously ensure that this information is shared. It is, of course, public information anyway, and it must be honored as such. And I think with that, let me pass on to the next speaker. Thank you, Lerato. John. John, you got to swap seats with me.
Hello, can you hear me?
You got to swap seats with me, John.
John, just to shuffle.
Let's go.
Good morning. Okay, thank you. Just to give you a quick feedback as far as our coalition talks are concerned, thank you, Lerato, for introducing the panel. I will just refresh your memories. It's myself, Dr. Makosi Kosa, who's on my left, to my right, Feki Mentor, and to my extreme right, Abel Tau. We comprise of the negotiating team as put together by our Senate. Now, on the onset, let me explain that we have, and also just make you aware of the fact that we have had telephonic conversations with a number of political parties, which includes the ACDP, the AIC, COPE, GOOD, and the IFP. On Friday, on short notice, we received a call and a request for a meeting from the DA. And given the short period of time, it was just myself and Abel Tau who were able to attend that meeting, which was attended by Helen Ziller and Thomas Walters on behalf of the Democratic Alliance. And that was more touch base type of meeting, which was very brief as far as the actual negotiation talks are concerned, because there was a proposal put forth by them about Tshwane, that they want a stable government in Tshwane that can deliver services to the people. And of course, my response was, why do we not include Johannesburg? For we also have an omnibus approach, which is to speak about coalition and the possibility of coalitions in all municipalities where we have contested for elections. And it is with that in mind that I am surprised by the fact that this morning in the media we learned that the DA has got no problem with having Mr. Mashaba as a mayoral candidate in Johannesburg. That was not even raised at that particular brief interaction with regard to coalitions. But be that as it may, we remain open to communicate and to discuss what is in the best interest of the people of South Africa overall, and more specifically in the municipalities we have contested, and in particular Johannesburg and in Tshwane. Because ultimately we want to give to the people what is just and right for them, and to ensure that we have a prosperous future that is based upon stable, clean, efficient and effective governance. So we await for further communication from the Democratic Alliance. We did have a meeting with the EFF yesterday, an in-person meeting with the EFF yesterday as a team. And as a team, we have some very serious, reservations about the pitch that was forwarded to us or made towards us yesterday. And also last night, early evening, we received an electronic version of the proposed service delivery pact with us. And after this meeting, together as a team, we will be going through that document with a fine-tooth comb so as to see what it actually entails, and that for us to get to understand what it is that they are proposing. And today, in fact, we will be having a face-to-face meeting with the IFP as well as with COPE. So that is where we are at this moment in time. And as I indicated, we are open to have discussions and talks with all political parties except the ANC, of course, because we put the interests of South Africans first. Is there anything that I've perhaps forgotten? Frankie and Nkosi and Abel? Thank you.
Thank you, John. We are now pass the mic over to Mr. Michael Beaumont, who is going to outline our coalition's agreement for your interest. I forgot to mention that at the outset.
All right, thank you. It's a real game of musical chairs here, so we like to keep things interesting. What we're now going to do is spend some time walking you through ActionSA's submissions into a coalition agreement. And I think just by way of a little bit of context here, it's very important to appreciate that coalitions need to be defined in terms of a written agreement. They can't just be dealt with in terms of verbal discussions, because there are some very particular things that have to be agreed to in terms of how they interact, how political parties within those coalitions conduct themselves, to ensure that their agenda being served is that of the residents, and particularly within the environment where so many people have reservations about the stability of coalitions. This is a very important point. I think it also needs to be premised on the idea that these are ActionSA's inputs. In other words, we fully accept the fact that there will be other political parties with whom we may work that will have their own inputs, and we have no doubt that whatever agreement may ultimately be concluded would be an amalgamation of the different inputs of political parties, and we have the humility to understand that. So firstly, it's very important to understand that the values and norms that we will be ensuring through this coalition agreement are to achieve a healthy working relationship between parties, to reduce the scope for conflict and therefore instability, to provide mechanisms to address the inevitable conflict that may arise and that cannot be removed, to produce transparency for how these governments and these arrangements are managed, which has been a very central part of what we are doing here today, and to generate a regular review to ensure that these agreements are kept up to date and adapt to the circumstances in which coalitions find themselves. A very important part is obviously in our preamble to our document, in which we characterize the situation in South Africa and in municipalities in general, because it is very important that coalition partners have an understanding and a shared understanding of the state of things in South Africa, how things have come to be the way they are, but very importantly, a mutual commitment to how we will work together in order to deal with the situations in which so many South Africans find themselves today. We have put down our core values as an organization, because as you will recall from the engagement process presented to you, South Africans want us to work with organizations that have similar values. In this regard, in the local government context, we're talking about economic prosperity, we're talking about non-racialism, a commitment to social justice, an achievement of the rule of law, quality education, which is also a feature at local government level in terms of early childhood development, ethical leadership, and a capable civil service. These are the values that are central to our arrangement, and when we say we will only partner with organizations that share our values, that is exactly what we are talking about. It's very important in this agreement that all political parties commit to the idea of being humble, and what we mean by that is accepting the principle that no party has gotten an outright majority and shouldn't act as they have. Each political party must understand that they have a responsibility to bring to the table solutions and listen to solutions of other political parties, so that there's a diversity and a combining of manifestos to address the complex lived realities that is that of South Africa. Importantly, it deals with transparency, and again, exactly what we are doing here. So the first thing is, upon signing this agreement, the signatory parties will present its contents together, because we must have these contents of this agreement public, with all the details contained therein. We have said that the constituent parties should hold quarterly media briefings to report the performance of the municipality, to raise opportunities to improve the lives of South Africans, to identify challenges that may exist within government, And there must be a continuous process of opening up the management of coalitions so that the bright light of scrutiny and public attention can shine in how these things are being managed. We have said that if there is any allegation of impropriety against a political party or a representative of a political party in a coalition agreement, it must be openly communicated, it must be openly investigated, and upon the conclusion of that investigation, the findings must be made public. As we have communicated already, this must include any allegations of wrongdoing that have taken place within the last 5 years of coalition government, because it's important so that everybody knows who they are partnering with and that we are working with individuals who operate on an ethical basis. We have said that all political office bearers within these coalition arrangements will undergo annual lifestyle audits, the outcomes of which will be made public, and they will similarly agree to the publication of their disclosures of interests, which is an important part to ensure there are no conflicts of interest. We have indicated that in addition to that, an independent entity will be tendered by the City of Johannesburg that must oversee tender processes in all municipalities, tender processes that must be observed by this independent entity, the purpose of which is to ensure that tender processes are being watched and that any tender irregularities are being openly communicated to the public and investigated by the relevant municipality. We cannot have coalitions where it is rumored that political parties are involving themselves in these processes without having the requisite observations of how they are taking place. The most important part of our coalition agreement resides in the section we call a Common Service Delivery Program of Action. And what we mean by that is you can agree to all of these things and you can agree to position sharing and all sorts of things, but it is meaningless if there's not an agreement on the service delivery agenda that has to be delivered in every municipality. And this is where we will spend the bulk of our time in this coalition agreement. What is important is that in this section we will identify the service delivery priorities of a municipality. What is also very important is we must identify what are the non-priorities, because in the resource-constrained environment of local government, in order to adequately fund your priorities and make that impact, you have to defund your non-priorities. We lay down a number of principles, which include the appointment of credible and qualified officials without political interference. We talk about a change management program that aligns institutional culture to the new service delivery agenda. We talk about an institutional review that ensures the design of the municipality is aligned to its service delivery priorities. We talk about a performance management system that is aligned to the priorities of service delivery so that all departments and entities' requirements are broken down to the levels of individuals and teams and their contributions are being measured. That a mutually codependent pro-poor and pro-business service delivery agenda prioritizes both the work of addressing inequality and the preconditions for economic growth and job creation. An infrastructure-led growth and maintenance capacity that produces an increasing reliability of service and takes services to communities that have never had them before. Responsible and sustainable financial management and compliance practices, and open and fair allocation processes when it comes to housing, tenders, and temporary work opportunities in these municipalities. I think, ladies and gentlemen, while one could go on, and this document certainly does, you will get the essence of what it is we're talking about. And while we are willing to engage any political party in terms of what they believe should be added to these things are very important. And when our survey engaged South Africans on shared values, these are certainly things that represent our shared values as an organization. For the sake of everybody, what we will ensure is within the next 24 hours, this document will be uploaded on our website and will be available for anybody to receive. And it will also include a much more detail-oriented breakdown of what we mean in terms of the specifics of a service delivery agenda in each of the municipalities we are referring to. Within the next 24 hours, that will be made available on our website. Thank you, Lorato.
Michael, do you want to do the thing before? You want to come back there? Okay.
You're going to...
Right? I'm going to show you.
not working? You didn't pass sprays, or will the spray make it work?
Yeah.
No.
First. Yeah, boy.
Okay, that's working. Colleagues, members of the media, fellow South Africans, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to share with you what we as ActionSA believe to be more than important for the South African political landscape. We come from a very difficult past of colonialism, past of 70 years under the National Party government, 27 years of ANC corruption and misrule, the last 5 years of failed coalition arrangement with a new democratic country. And I think we need to be fair to ourselves, but at the same time take learnings from our mistakes. The last 5 years of failed coalition arrangement has been a disaster. Not a disaster to political parties, because the political parties carried on with their lives. Who suffered are the residents, our voters, our South African citizens. So we cannot afford to really make the same mistakes. We are human beings, we make mistakes, we are fallible, but that does not mean that we've got to continue making the same mistakes. For us as ActionSA, the 2.6% voting pool that we received, we don't really take it for granted. We are here as servants of the 2.4 million people who voted us into power, real servants. And we are grateful for the opportunity that they gave us. We represent them. We don't represent ActionSA. ActionSA is a vehicle. And I think we've been really very clear as a political party from the day we were founded that we are here to represent society. ActionSA is a vehicle through which all of us as public representatives are going to serve society and put society first. So one thing I want to really make it really very clear, that this complex, difficult period we're going to go through, because obviously when we were campaigning to get outright majority in all the municipalities. That's how human beings operate. You don't operate to really be in the second league. You want to be in the first league. But at the end of the day, the voters are the ones representing.
Right, we're coming out of that ActionSA holding a media briefing led by the National Chairman Michael Beaumont on the outcome of the public participation platform on coalition launched last Thursday. We had lost connection, but let's take you back.
We opened up this platform to everyone who lives in the 6 municipalities we contested. And I think for us, we really want, and I really want to plead with political parties wanting to engage us in this very important future of this country. Please engage us, show mutual respect. I think it's very important, because we believe very strongly that the only way that we can succeed is if we show mutual respect. I was the mayor of the city of Johannesburg, had really terrible experience. I went into an arrangement, very difficult, complex arrangement, and as an outsider, I had no clue about politics, but I was born and brought up to recognize common decency and respect. And I went into that arrangement with it. Unfortunately, it was impossible because of the arrogance displayed by certain parties. So I think we want everyone who wants to really engage with us. Whether you bring one seat, whether you bring in 44 seats like us, please treat that political party with one vote as equal partners in this arrangement. because that is the will of the people. It's not us who actually made that decision. All the parties that want to work with us must understand that we're going to put people first. It's not about political parties. We must forget and put our core values or whatever. There are certain things, yes, that are not negotiable. But at the end of the day, we've got to put people of South Africa first. If you believe you want to put your party ahead of saving society, then please don't waste our time, because the deal is already it's not going to be concluded. So I think it's important for political parties wanting to negotiate with us that we put South Africans first. And I think what's also very important is that we need to do everything possible to ensure that we have stable government. We cannot afford to get into an arrangement where we can already see in advance the possibility of an unstable government. One of the fortunate South Africans was involved in coalition arrangement over 3 years. Lots of learnings from that, where you can see in advance that this particular political party, it's not advisable to get involved in it, because yes, you can do it now for political expediency, but somewhere along the line, you're going to have challenges. So where we see challenges, what we are saying, please, let's rather be open to our fellow South Africans, because it's in our interest that we do this, to say, look, we don't feel comfortable going into bed with this particular political party, because we are going to encounter challenges with them. So it's important when we pick up coalition partners, stable government has to really be one of the key aspects of what we need to really look into, because honestly we'll be failing ourselves or ultimately failing people of our country. We are very clear as ActionSA that in the event we are unable to conclude a coalition arrangement, we are happy to not really be in government, to be in the opposition benches, which would be very unfortunate. We said to people of South Africa when we were campaigning that we don't want to be in the opposition benches, but people have spoken, whether we like it or not. Let's say, for an example, in the city of Johannesburg, with 16%, where we really exceeded, we performed well, but you can't form a government with 16%. So in the event that we are unable to find coalition partners that can work with us to serve people of South Africa, we are happy to be on the opposition benches and prepare ourselves for 2024, a big project, which is around the corner. I can tell you now, we're going to wake up tomorrow, 2024 is around the corner. So we are happy to be in the opposition benches, prepare ourselves to set up structures throughout the country. As you are aware, we're sitting right now with only 3 provincial chairpersons. So we've got 6 more provinces to ensure that we have a full-time professional chairpersons who can start the work of preparing ActionSA for 2024. So we're happy to do that. You know, one thing that I discussed earlier on with my colleagues, and I think it's very important to let people of South Africa know that in the event that no political party in any of the municipalities we've contested, and we're in part of that council, in the event that no one actually manages to get outright majority, we're not afraid to really go for an election rerun. This is for us a last option, and we are going to do everything possible to ensure that we don't go into an election rerun. We'll do everything in our power to ensure that we conclude coalition arrangement so that we can serve the residents, because ultimately failure to form a government it would be unfortunate. Who suffers? We know obviously in this country we are facing voter apathy. We've just went through the lowest voter turnout. So voter apathy is there. Is it going to be there forever? We don't know. We can't really focus for now. And there are cost implications for election rerun. It's running an election campaign. It's not a cheap exercise. We don't have unlimited budget as ActionSA. We are constrained financially like all other political parties, but if you are forced to go for a rerun, we will do that. But I think what is actually would be very, very, very unfortunate, actually the last point that I'd like to bring to attention is that you can imagine during that period when we are campaigning again, who's going to suffer are the residents, because there's going to be a government vacuum. In the event where you don't have government, who suffers are our residents. And I don't have to really tell you the plight of our people out there. Across the country, service delivery has been a huge challenge. Huge challenge. We don't have electricity. We've had to stage 4 load shedding, potholes. Us as the city of Johannesburg, I landed here last night when I got home. My wife was telling me that there's a possibility of us having water shortages, street lights not working, public safety a huge issue. And that's really what local government is about. It's actually the coalface of service delivery. When you have local government collapsing in any nation, you've got a disaster. I know of so many countries where people are actually happy not to have national government, but they cannot afford to have local government collapsing. You know, actually, I remember some few years ago in Belgium, I've got business friends and people I know there for a couple of years. They did not have national government and they were the happiest. But they cannot afford not to have local government, because local government is at the coalface of service delivery. So you can imagine, if you look at the fail of local government, the last 27 years of our democracy, to subject people to another 90 days, because it will take 90 days to go through that election process. But in the event we are unable to form a government, nothing we can do. It's something that is completely outside the control of ActionSA. It is for that reason that we'll do everything possible, as long as other parties will approach us with viable, people-centric proposals for us to serve this beautiful country of us. Our people deserve governments and they deserve better. Thank you very much from my side.
All right, thank you, Dr. Mashaba. Colleagues, before we open up the Q&A, let me just hand over to Michael to just give us a few pointers.
Thank you, Lerato. And I think just very briefly, members of the media, you undoubtedly have a number of questions, but I really just wanted to appeal to you that ActionSA has committed itself to a first in this country by engaging you with this level of transparency and openness, sharing with you where we stand, providing you information that no other political party provides. But at the same time, it's very important that when we engage one another with questions and answers, we appreciate that we cannot at the same time sabotage negotiations by engaging on a level of detail with conversations that are still quite premature. So if you wouldn't mind bearing with us, we have a responsibility to those people. People will not negotiate with us in good faith if what they say in the early days of negotiations is being published in the media the next day. And we commit ourselves to continuously share more and more information with you going forward. and certainly when negotiations get to a much stronger and more final point. So I hope you don't mind that when we receive your questions, there may be questions that you feel frustrated by our inability to answer, but I think please appreciate that when South Africans say they want us to enter coalition, they don't expect us to be the ones that prevent that from happening by way of being irresponsible with information. So I hope you appreciate where we come from in that regard.